It has been 14 years since peace came to Northern Ireland, with the so-called Good Friday Agreement that ended the 3 decades of sectarian conflict here, known as the Troubles. But vivid memories remain of the violence between nationalist militants like the IRA and the British Army and Loyalist paramilitaries that killed more than 3,000 people. In 2001, a group of academics set out to collect the oral history of Northern Ireland's combatants. They say to record the truth before it was too late.
I think we have to understand why people become involved in conflict, why people who would live normal, peaceful lives are drawn into the most violent of conflicts. Once those people had died, those voices would be lost forever.
One-time IRA member Anthony McIntyre served 17 years in prison for murder of a Loyalist foe. After his release, he earned his PhD. He was hired by Irish journalist Ed Maloney to help create what they called the Belfast Project, an audio archive of around 40 interviews with former fighters.
Well, this is a letter from George Mitchell.
William Plum Smith, a former Loyalist combatant, was a participant.
We had a story that hadn't been told, that needed to be told, so that people in the future from different countries involved in conflict can maybe look at our situation and benefit from it educationally.
An ocean away, Boston College was eager to include the Belfast Project in its renowned collection of Irish research.
The enterprise of oral history has great importance to the academic world, to helping to solve sectarian strife.
Jack Dunn is Boston College's spokesman.
Being the repository of the Belfast Project, of these tapes regarding the Troubles, seemed like a logical thing for a university of caliber to do.
This was just a pure, simple one-page agreement that we signed.
Interviewees like William Smith were promised that their testimony would remain confidential until their deaths. And that's how it went for years, the tapes hidden away under lock and key on Boston College's campus. But in 2010, that all changed, after infamous IRA commander Brendan Hughes died and his interviews were released.
A lot of the stuff that I'm saying here, I'm saying it in trust because I have a trust in you. I mean, I have never, ever, ever admitted being a member of the IRA, never. I've just done it here.
And then last summer, a bombshell. The U.S. Department of Justice, acting on behalf of United Kingdom law enforcement, subpoenaed the tapes of several interview subjects who were still alive.
What led to the subpoenas was the fact that one of the participants, Dolores Price, had given an interview with Irish media in which she had referenced the tapes and implicated herself in the murder and abduction of Jean McConville.
It never goes away. You wake up with it in the morning and it's there at night when you go to bed. It just never leaves you. Even after 40 years, it's still hard.
Helen McHenry was 15 years old in 1972 when her mother, Jean McConville, was branded an informant by the IRA.
The IRA came and kicked the door in. The kids were screaming, but they didn't pay attention to anybody, just dragged my mother out of the house, and that was the last she was ever seen of.
McConville disappeared for 3 decades until her body was found on a beach in 2003. Word that the Boston College archives might hold answers spurred authorities to reinvigorate the case and raise the hopes of Helen and her husband, Seamus.
To me, it's important that I know what's on the tape, and also maybe, there'll be a court case and someone will pay for what they did to my mother.
And I would implore him to release the tapes. And it's not just compassion we're looking for, it's reality, This might give my wife the peace she deserves.
But researcher Anthony McIntyre says there are greater considerations.
Regardless of what individual victims may want, and what they want is fully understandable, the researcher must at all times seek to protect their sources and ethically defend their sources and not become an evidence gatherer for the state. There is no compromise in that.
The Justice Department argues it is compelled to demand the interviews on behalf of the UK under something called the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaty that promises cooperation on criminal investigations. Jonathan Albano is a First Amendment lawyer working pro bono for the American Civil Liberties Union.
There are significant First Amendment issues raised when the government, in this case a foreign government, is seeking a judicial order requiring academics or journalists to turn over confidential materials.
Albano says the treaties the U.S. signs with its allies do not automatically override the protections given to journalists by the Supreme Court.
I'm not saying, so therefore all subpoenas are off limits. What we are saying is this is an important enough area where people have the right to be heard, and you really do have to carefully engage in an analysis of, is there a real need? What will be the potential harm? And is it worth imposing these kinds of burdens on protected First Amendment communications?
Back in Northern Ireland, there are concerns the tape's release will hinder, not help, the search for truth.
If the daughter of this particular victim gets answers through the Boston College tapes, then that is going to close down the very real potential for the other victims getting answers, because people will not come forward as part of a truth recovery process if the information that they divulge is to be used against them in courts.
Former militant William Smith says it's already happening on the streets of Belfast, where he works with ex-combatants. And so he wants his tapes back.
The damage that it's doing to truth recovery or conflict transformation is tremendous. You know, people will not talk now.
Couldn't you have foreseen, though, this was such a politically sensitive topic? There were crimes unsolved. Wasn't it a little naive to think that nobody would ever come asking for these tapes?
Well, you can argue, state that now, because people have come asking for the tapes. It seemed at the time that the conflict had been brought to an end and that the British were not interested in pursuing anybody for activity prior to the Good Friday Agreement. I think that the British state are hopeful the tapes may reveal something about the role in the IRA of the current president of Sinn Féin and the leading advocate of the peace process, Gerry Adams.
Gerry Adams, the well-known Irish nationalist politician, was implicated in both the Brendan Hughes tapes and the Dolores Price interview. But he has repeatedly denied he was an IRA member or had anything to do with Jean McConville's murder. McIntyre says he's now been labeled an informant. His wife, Carrie Twomey, is American. Her husband can't travel to the U.S. because of his murder conviction, so she is lobbying on his behalf.
I am an American citizen, and my children are American citizens. And this is the actions of my government placing our lives in danger. And that's one of the messages that I took to Washington, D.C. when I met with the senatorial offices and members of Congress.
20 members of Congress have expressed their worries over the subpoenas, including Senator John Kerry, who urged the State Department to work with the British to revoke their request, writing he was concerned about its impact on the Northern Ireland peace process. It's a concern shared by Northern Ireland's Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness.
Anybody reading the news reports from the United States here will be very concerned about how that situation is being used by elements who are not favourably disposed to the peace process in order to use that situation to destabilise the progress that we have made.
But the legal battle is working its way through the American court system. Boston College sued to quash the subpoenas, but did agree to allow a judge to read transcripts of the interviews, despite the researchers' strong objections. And in December, that judge found that the UK's request concerned serious allegations of murder that weighed strongly in favor of disclosure of the confidential information. Boston College is now appealing that decision.
It is a struggle between obligations. We have an obligation as a university to uphold the enterprise of oral history and academic research, which we value greatly. And yet we understand the government's obligation to comply with the treaty with Great Britain. And I also feel an obligation for the McConville kids who are looking for answers to their 40-year-old question regarding their mother's horrific murder. So it's very difficult.
McIntyre and his colleague Ed Maloney launched their own intervention when Boston College decided not to appeal the subpoena related to the interviews of Dolores Price, saying she had broken her own confidentiality when she spoke to the press.
Boston College seemed to be making a case for partial handover, as distinct from protecting the whole archive against any handover. And myself and Ed Maloney are not prepared to abandon any of the research participants.
Despite the impact this case could have on Northern Ireland and on American law, it remains unclear whether the information on the tapes could actually be admitted as evidence in any prosecution. But Helen McKendry and her husband wait and hope they will soon have the truth, if not the justice, for what happened to her mother.